Alright, how's everybody doing out there? It's time for another edition of In Between Days, where we talk about everything going on in Salem on the hit NBC soap Days of Our Lives, also seen on Global in Canada. And I am your host, Jason. I've been watching Days of Our Lives since Elvis was alive. No, not that Elvis, the other Elvis. We're going to be talking in this edition about Thursday and Friday of this week, as well as next week's promo video, and we have some news on comings and goings, so stick around for all of that. If you missed any of our latest episodes before this one, our previous episodes can be found in the archives. Just go to playlists and check out the Days of Our Lives videos. We're going to start things off with Thursday. So on Thursday's Days of Our Lives, EJ, Tony, and Chad are preparing for their meeting in the living room. They're going to be going and taking that Dimera vote, and we're going to get all into that. The Dimeras are voting on whether or not to oust Jake Dimera out of power. Chad tells Tony that Abby, his wife, is uninterested in seeing him or what he does right now, so he will help focus on Dimera and getting Jake out of power. Now, just a side note here, Marcy Miller has been off on maternity leave, so that is why they have written out the character of Abigail Dimera, but that is temporary, and we will get to that, some news about that, a little later on. Kate, who is faking blindness, still faking her blindness, reads a magazine when no one is around in her own room, as she tries to get Jake to come over by making him kind of feel a little bit guilty. So she's continuing to play her games there. Gabby also visits Kate and tells her the truth, which is that Jake is with her out of pity and actually wants to be with Gabby. Gate, I just made another super couple. I do that once an episode, it seems like. But Gabby and Kate, I guess, would be Gate. But Kate plays the game for now, amused that later she will drop a huge bomb, and it's going to be a good one, but that's coming on Friday, so hang in there. Meanwhile, at the pub, Sammy tells Roman that she's staying in Salem with EJ after all. Lucas then comes downstairs because he's recently moved into the room above the pub, as we all know, and there's some tense interaction there. Roman ends up asking Sammy, once Lucas is kind of gone, why things seem so intense with the two of them, with Lucas and Sammy, that is. Sammy blames it on the fact that they were recently kidnapped together and went through a whole ordeal like that, but she doesn't exactly mention what they were doing when they were kidnapped together. At the Horton Town Square, Rafe and Lucas run into each other and have a seat to have a little bit of a chat. And wouldn't you know it, EJ then runs into them as well. He gets insulted by both Rafe and Lucas, and he actually has a seat with them and tries to smooth a few things out. And of course, almost on cue, you see that Sammy also has joined them. Sammy also joins them and asks what the heck is going on. She doesn't sit down for a drink with them. She reacts a little bit differently than that, and it's a very awkward thing seeing her husband sitting with her other two ex-husbands. EJ and Sammy then get up, or EJ gets up, and EJ and Sammy go home. Sammy suggests that EJ should stay away from Rafe and Lucas if their life in Salem is going to be, doable, the best to avoid Lucas and Rafe, perhaps. Gabby goes to Jake's office to talk to him into having sex because she's just about had enough, except when it comes to Jake. Jake tells her he doesn't have time and can't be doing that because the Dimeras are secretly plotting to get him out of power at Dimera, and then Gabby immediately goes into action, grabs the wheel-away whiteboard from the office, and starts to strategize. Easy for me to say. So she goes through all the people who are going to have a vote, and here's where I have some ideas. So Gabby goes over the fact that Stefano had a son that many of us don't think about named Benji. He was raised for a little bit by Steve and Kayla, but he ended up being a Dimera in the end. Benji is no longer living, but does have a son named Stephen Hawk. So by blood, Stephen Hawk would have inherited that first vote. There's also Peter Dimera, who was an adopted son of Stefano and grew up with Kristen Dimera. They don't mention Peter very often whatsoever, but in this case, Peter is mentioned, and he also carries a vote because he is considered to be a Dimera and a son of Stefano. Kristen, of course, would theoretically have a vote, but she's on the run right now, basically as a fugitive. Theo Carver will have a vote because he inherited the vote that Lexi would have had. Lexi, one of the daughters of Stefano, is deceased. So Theo's parents are Abe Carver and Lexi. Theo inherits Lexi's vote. Kate inherits Stefano's vote because Kate was married to Stefano. I think that's how that one works. And Gabby, of course, inherits Stefan's vote. So those are all the votes, and also Mr. Shin has a vote. The only way anybody else would have a vote is if they were a living sibling of Stefano's, or if they were the sibling of a dead son. Anyways, I hope you can all follow that. My question was, why not Johnny? He is an adult age as well. Why would Johnny not get a vote? So I pondered that over in my mind for a little bit. Why Johnny and Allie are the same age. Allie obviously doesn't get a vote because she's not a Dimera, but her twin brother, who has a different set of parents. So Allie's parents are Lucas and Sammy, and Johnny's parents are Sammy and EJ, despite the fact that they're twins, if you remember. So I was thinking to myself, wouldn't Johnny get a vote? Would that not be the case? But the reason Johnny doesn't get a vote is the only reason Theo has a vote. It's not because he's simply a Dimera. Theo has a vote because Lexi, his mother, has passed away, and the vote is passed down to him. So the only way that Johnny would be getting a vote is if EJ was passed away. So I had to let that one simmer a little bit, but I think I understand how everything's working now. I still think there's one or two missing Dimeras out there. We know that Andre is dead, but is he dead? And of course, Kristen could show up again at any time. But we'll get into what happened with that vote a little bit more on Friday, because that's how Friday's episode kind of ends. In the meantime, let's talk about how Thursday's episode ends. So Kate is basically the swing vote right now. It all is going to depend on how Kate votes. And Chad wants to know from Kate if they can count on her vote. At first, Kate says absolutely not, because she has to play it as she's pro Jake, and she's waiting for when she wants to drop the bomb that she's not blind and has been doing this revenge thing. But Kate basically convinces her that it's now or never and asks her to grow up a little and please do the right thing. And the right thing for everybody seems to be to get Jake out of power before he completely screws up the Dimera legacy. I'm not sure what I was doing there. But we're going to get into Friday's episode of Days of Our Lives without a break, coming up right now. So on Friday, Rafe is in bed with Ava to start the show, but he's dreaming about Nicole in his sleep. And then we see EJ and Sammy waking up in bed as well. They're reading an article about the Dimera vote that is coming up. EJ says he has found his sister Kristen and that she would most likely vote in his favor. Sammy then begs EJ to leave Kristen out of it and find another way. She's like, Kristen's a fugitive, it's not a good idea, and EJ actually agrees and says he could never say no to Sammy, which is arguably not true. Nicole goes to the pub to question Lucas about Sammy, and Lucas starts to catch on because of all her questions. She gives Lucas's grandchild Henry to Lucas. Of course, Henry lives with Nicole and his mother. Give me a second here. Allie, of course. So Henry lives with his mother Allie at Nicole's. Nicole was taking care of Henry, and she leaves Henry with Lucas, but she's also basically there to ply Lucas with questions about Sammy because she's suspicious about them. And as Nicole leaves, Sammy enters. They exchange phony hellos. Lucas then warns Sammy about Nicole's asking him a bunch of questions about what's going on with the two of them. So Lucas warns Sammy that if Sammy keeps pressing Nicole about their possible affair, Nicole's possible affair with Xander when it comes to Eric, Lucas is warning her that she may get a little bit investigated as well, because Nicole is very suspicious for some reason about Lucas and Sammy, and Sammy wonders how she started to get suspicious about that. Ava goes upstairs. Wait, we missed something here. Rafe and Ava talk about Lucas seeming jealous of Sammy and EJ. And then Ava goes upstairs. Rafe finds Nicole at the door. Nicole is there to see Ava, but she also mentions to Rafe that she would like to see him too. Ava comes down to the kitchen, and Nicole tells Ava that she thinks there is no dirt on Sammy and Lucas after all. Ava is not so sure. Rafe, meanwhile, recollects his dream about Nicole, so that's getting a little bit interesting. Tony tells Chad that Gabby secured Stephen Hawke's vote, so it appears that Stephen Hawke is going to vote to keep Jake in power. Peter, on the other hand, is voting with EJ to take Jake out of power. Jake, meanwhile, is still confident that he has nothing to worry about because Kate is the swing vote, and Kate will keep him in power. So there's nothing to worry about there, thinks Jake. Li Shin arrives for the vote. He also has a vote because he's been put in charge of all this by Stefano. So Li Shin votes for Jake as he's a fan of Jake, and there's a lot of speculation amongst everybody that Li Shin is trying to take over the company, and that's why he likes Jake in the position, even though Jake is not qualified for the position. And finally, Friday's show ends with Kate surprising Jake and a few other people when she votes to remove Jake as the CEO. And everyone is, well, maybe not everyone. I mean, Chad might not have been quite as shocked, but Jake and Gabby, for starters, are quite shocked that Kate has voted to get Jake out. And now that is just the beginning of Jake finding out that Kate knew all along what he had done with Gabby. She is also not really blind, and we don't know exactly for sure how much of that will come out, but it's all going to come out at least slowly, if not right away, now that we know that Jake will be removed from power unless some other Dimera shows up. There's still that Kristen vote out there, but I don't think Kristen would vote with Jake, so I think it would just make it worse. They kept Kristen out of it, although there are some rumblings that Kristen is going to return for a few episodes, even though she's once again basically a fugitive on the run, and Brady seems done with Kristen. I don't know. She's a Dimera. She's going to show up again, but I don't think it's going to affect the Dimera vote stuff. Anyways, we've got a little bit more to talk about. This next section we're going to talk about is the promo video for next week. So these aren't spoilers necessarily. We're just going to discuss the promo video, but if there's anybody out there that doesn't want to know any sort of information about next week on Days of Our Lives, then you can skip this part and I will not be too hurt. But for those of us that want to know about the promo video that comes out each week, it's about 15 seconds, and the promo video had a theme of make your move, and here's what happened in the promo video, so you can skip or pause right now if you don't want to hear about it. But in the promo video for the week coming up, Philip asks Chloe if he stands a chance with her or not. We also see Gabby and Jake sharing a kiss. Also sharing a kiss are Abe and Paulina. We see Sammy and EJ in bed. Ben and Sierra are also shown in the video, and Ben tells Sierra, "Ever since you left, I can't stop thinking about you." Sierra, meanwhile, still has none of her memory of her time with Ben and wants Ben to sign the divorce papers. Ben tells Sierra that he burned the divorce papers and that's not gonna happen, and that's your promo video. So lots coming up there. We're just gonna finish things off with one last section. I think this is the first time we've ever done comings and goings on Days of Our Lives, but I'm gonna let you know that on July the 1st, Sierra, played by Victoria Conifal, who just won a Grammy for her role as Sierra Brady, she will be coming back. She will not at first necessarily have her memory, and she will be followed not too far behind by the current actor playing Theo. Theo is coming back to town, and as I mentioned earlier in this video, I'm going to leave you finally with the news that Marcy Miller's version of Abigail Devereaux will be back on screen very soon. She was off for maternity leave, so they kind of wrote her out there for a little bit, where she had to go and contemplate where she stood and how she felt about what Chad had done with Gwen and all of that. But in reality, Marcy Miller was on maternity leave, and she will be rejoining the show very shortly. And that is your end of week Days of Our Lives recap and discussion. Thanks for listening once again. As always, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can get the latest news. If you're interested in any weird news, you can check out my Weird News podcast. It is now called Wait, That's Weird. We just finished recording episode 3, and it is available for now on this channel in between days. See you next time.